Hello and welcome to the very first Spotlight, a series of webcasts where we answer your questions. I'm Samantha Porry. I joined Balfour Beatty in 2009 as part of the graduate scheme. I'm currently working for Balfour Beatty Construction Northern as a section engineer, and I'll be your host of the first edition of Spotlight. This series is about shining a light on our priorities and discussing how we can all work together to achieve our goals. We'll have an open and honest debate about our future and find out more about the great work that we're doing across the group. Today, we're going to focus on the journey towards zero harm. Thank you to everyone for sending in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible. To do that, I'm joined today by Ian Tyler, the Chief Executive Officer, Sally Braley, the Director of Health and Safety, and Andrew McNaughton, Chief Operating Officer. Our first question today comes from Paul Creighton from Balfour Beatty Engineering Services in Reading. Ian, Paul's question: what is the safety vision for 2012 and also beyond?
Well, the answer to that obviously is in the title and is in the phrase zero harm. Zero means zero. Our objective is that we deliver absolute safety to the workforce, to our staff, to all of our supply chain, and indeed to everybody who comes into contact with us. And it's an important point about zero harm. To achieve that, we have to not just be lucky, we have to eliminate the risk of serious accidents across the group, and that requires a diligent approach, bottom-up approach to how risk is managed across the group. And it's our vision for 2012, but it's our vision beyond 2012 as well.
Yeah. Andrew, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, as Ian said, achieving that goal of zero by 2012. So beyond 2012, the real essence of it is to maintain that position right the way across our operations. And the fascinating thing for us is we're never static. We're always moving, we're always growing. And so we're always taking on new activities. So the key, as Ian said, about eliminating risk is in the future to keep us in that position. As we take on new activities, we have to identify those risks and continually to eliminate them to keep all those people that Ian said safe from harm.
Yeah. The second question today comes in from Rajan Mudalai at Balfour Beatty Rail in Malaysia. Andrew, he asks, some operating companies are yet to achieve zero harm and appear unlikely to in 2012. What are your plans to address this?
I think, first of all, before I go into that, I think it's important to note that the huge distance we've travelled since we started this journey. Not only are many of our operations and our companies out there operating to the criteria of zero harm, but they're acting beyond. And many of our projects and our business is being conducted incident-free all around the world.
Yeah.
But we're not perfect yet. And the comment is quite interesting because there are a number of reasons for that. Since we started on this journey, the company has grown tremendously and new businesses have joined us. And so as new businesses join us, they have to start their own journey. And so they're starting from different places. And we have to acknowledge that as we bring new businesses in and as we look to the future and bring new businesses in, because of what we're trying to do, none of those businesses will be at zero harm at that time.
Yeah.
But also one of the other features that we have noticed, and it's interesting that the question's asked from one of our colleagues in Malaysia, because we have to acknowledge that there's some learning we have to take as to cultural differences around the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've quite got that right as we've gone forward. But what do we do to ensure that we do achieve those? It has to be a relentless focus of the leadership on eliminating those risks that we talked about a moment ago. And actually not only encouraging, but bringing all of the new businesses onto their journey when they join us. And actually that focus and that thinking about the cultural differences that we have around the world as we grow ever broader in our footprint.
I think it's just worth picking up a couple of the points that Andrew makes there. In particular, we set out a vision for zero harm by 2012, and we absolutely stand by that. I'm absolutely confident that large parts of our group will achieve that, and they will achieve that because they've gone a very long way to engineering out those risks. We are absolutely determined to achieve zero harm, exactly as we said, in as much of the group as we can. Andrew's quite right, of course. Some of the group has a harder journey. Some of it is actually is on the journey for a shorter period. But the principle that we set out over 3 years ago now is absolutely still the case, and I'm very confident that across big parts of the group we will achieve that.
Excellent. Sally, I'd like to put the next question to you. It comes in from Janine L. Shiro at Balfour Beatty Construction in San Diego. Janine asks, how does zero harm relate to office-based staff?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, there's two parts to the answer, really. First of all, zero harm absolutely applies to all of our people, whether they're based in the office or out on site. And I think we must make sure that we don't ignore office health and safety risks and just focus on the big risks that do happen out on site. So things like office safety, housekeeping, electrical safety, fire precautions are all just as important if you work in the office. But that's kind of the obvious answer. Yeah. The really important part that people can play if they work in their offices is the role that they can contribute to helping deliver zero harm out on site. Yeah. So it's very important that we, for every type of risk that we know we're going to face, we think very hard before we ever get on site, while we're still in the office, about how we design, how we plan, how we eliminate risk up front. And these people, we often refer to them as people in warm offices. And I know in Dubai they like to be called people in cool offices, actually. So they have an incredibly important part to play in helping us to achieve that risk elimination before we ever get onto site. It's a Swiss cheese principle in action.
Excellent.
I think I'd just like to add to that, the fact that what we have to remember is that everybody, all of our colleagues, wherever we are part of the group and therefore part of what we're trying to do. And therefore, we cannot, and it's not right for anybody in the business to say, I'm in an office, this doesn't apply to me. Everybody has to actually fully immersed in the philosophy of what we're trying to do, and whether it be through conversations with colleagues that come in to ensure that the message is continually in the front of people's minds.
Yeah. Andrew, maybe you can answer this one from James Elliott. From the Chris Britton Consultancy, part of Major Civil Engineering. What evidence is there that the supply chain being brought into the zero harm family, and what difference does this make to them as to us?
We've got huge amounts of evidence around the business, everywhere from, when we set out on this and we described our village broadly in the group, the vast majority of our village are our supply chain. Many of our projects are populated by people who don't work directly for us, but are our supply chain. But through the number of years that we've been doing this now, we can see everything from workshops where the supply chain have been involved in, innovation forums where our suppliers are involved in new product development, through to technical specifications for plant and equipment that is now being used, through to just actually letters we've received from suppliers, particularly several that we've seen across our activities in the United States, where they're acknowledging that our philosophy and the way we work and the engagement that we have with the supply chain is something that they've never seen before. And the benefits of it are evident. Yeah. And we have seen even instances where our supply chain have not only applied it to their work life, but it's flown over into their private life and the way that they look at how they go about things at home. Yeah. And it's just changed their way of thinking. So the evidence comes in many ways, and many of those letters that come in are really quite satisfying for the individual managers that have been involved in it.
Yeah.
It is a really good question, that one. I think we also just need to bear in mind that our supply chain are not simply there to be led. Many of our subcontractors and our suppliers are world-class organisations. And they have a huge amount to contribute to us, as much as us contributing to them. Yeah. And in most cases, we share very similar visions. The absolute target that or the way we articulate the target may be slightly different, but there is a huge amount of sharing with very much of our supply chain. And in many cases, they are the people that are driving our safety performance, every bit as much as we're driving their safety performance.
So they're as big a part as what we are in this, really, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Nathan Evers from Balfour Beatty owned Frucon Construction in Baltimore has sent in the next question. Ian, he wants to know, since the introduction of zero harm at Balfour Beatty, have you seen the effects of zero harm go beyond safety, and have they increased the overall success of projects?
I think again that's a really good question. Difficult to generalise about that, but I think it is absolutely the case that safety and quality are flip sides of the same coin, or rather, safety is a manifestation of quality. The thing that we're really doing in focusing on zero harm is we're focusing on the absolute quality of our thinking and our engineering. What we do now on site with zero harm is forcing us to take a much more analytical and much more rigorous approach, and that has to have an impact on the quality that we deliver on site. Now, very difficult to measure that precisely, but I think if you go and just listen to the philosophy that's now runs right through our delivery side of our projects in particular, it certainly has a much more quality-based edge to it. So I think it is having an effect, yes.
I think it's also one of some of the evidence we also see is that it flows into planning. Because much of the elimination of risk is down to how we plan and execute our work. So whether it be through things like off-site manufacture, where we're now taking the activity away from the site, which plays to Ian's quality point, but also productivity. So we're seeing much better quality, but actually the more efficient use of products into our sites, or even down to basic site layout and cleanliness on site. All of this is forcing people to think about how they go about their work, and that ultimately leads to better performance.
And it does rather nail the myth that I still get, it comes back to me, never within Balfour Beatty, but occasionally from outside, the myth that there's a conflict between performance and particularly financial performance and safety. In the main, and with almost no exception, the delivery of safety produces high quality performance and actually high quality financial performance in the long term.
Was that the plan in the beginning when we had zero harm, that it would be more than just safety?
Well, it's inevitably the focus had to be on safety for its own sake. The question about safety and the thing about safety overall, it is an absolute objective. It does genuinely sit above financial performance. It sits above everything else, because none of us here and none of us across the organisation can live with the fact that through our neglect somebody else is hurt, and that's an absolute statement. But it is very helpful that it is entirely consistent with all our business objectives, both operationally and strategically.
I think the great thing that's been able to emerge through the period of time that we've done this is we started into it. I guess it was a hypothesis that by delivering safety, performance would improve.
Yeah.
And what we've been able to show over the last few years is that is true.
Yeah.
And it, it's a great to be able to say, not only we believe that'll be the case, but to actually say it is the case.
Yeah. Excellent. The next question comes from Mark Snailham at Balfour Beatty Rail Inc. in Florida. Ian, he wants to know, how do we keep the zero harm momentum going beyond 2012, and what message do you personally want to convey to the workforce to ensure that they stay focused throughout this journey?
Well, we set the objective of 2012, and it was always quite an aggressive objective, but it was only to give us the focus and give us the momentum to deliver performance. The objective beyond that, as I say, is simply to continue to deliver that high quality of performance. The momentum has to come from within. Sure, we're not going to lose the zero harm brand, if that's the right word for it. We're not going to lose the thinking and the methodology that goes behind it. But what we have to get and what we have to ensure happens through the organisation is that we continue to be excited about the engineering challenges that will enable us to continue to deliver that. And that has to come right through our organisation. We haven't got to 2012 and kind of that's it and we'll go and find something else to do. It has to continue to be delivered through the organisation.
I think it would actually be quite dangerous if we think, tick in the box, got to 2012, achieve those objectives. Yeah. We have to keep working at it. Those behaviours and the leadership have to continue constantly to maintain it.
Yeah.
I think the momentum that's come through, I think that, and it's been fascinating to see how the baton has been picked up by everybody around the business. As we go beyond 2012, it's the examining all of the activities we do and looking at how we do them differently. How do we change? And I think the motto in the United States of doing things such that they significantly change the industry is actually really true. I mean, what we really want to do here, and it's not an arrogant statement, we want to be seen as leaders in what's going on, not just in safety but other things. But actually it's making significant change as to how we go about all the activities we do.
Excellent. Sally, this question comes in from Andrew DeBell from Parsons Brinkerhoff. Have you seen that zero harm is still considered by some to be the responsibility of expert advisors rather than line managers and individuals? Are there plans to address this?
Okay. Well, I think in the vast majority of the group, people do recognise that individuals do need to take responsibility, and safety is a line management responsibility. We set that out very, very clearly in our expectations for how we manage health and safety, and that's reinforced very strongly in the leadership programme that we've been running over the last couple of years. We've had the top 600 people across the group go through that programme, and this year we're going to follow that on with a programme called Managing Change, a 1.5-day programme that will take the next group of people on that same journey. So I do believe that in most places people do take the lead and really, take care of the safety of the people on their patch and make a huge difference through their personal passion and commitment and what they do.
Yeah. Andrew, would agree with Sally there? I
do. I think I come back to the point on culture as well, because there are pieces of the business where the emphasis on managing safety through policing safety is still something that we've got to move beyond, and we have to accept that we're not at the same place everywhere in the business.
Yeah.
But what Zero Harm has done is really challenged that philosophy, which is a philosophy that's been held in those parts of the business for many, many years. And we are seeing many of the line managers now stepping up and taking responsibility for that. So I think we will see that change. But again, we have to recognise that at a pace at which that will change will vary as depending on where we are in the world.
Yeah. The next question that we've had come in is coming from a number of people across the business, and Zero Harm's had some fantastic results, but ultimately we have had 5 fatalities in the last year. Ian, how successful do you think Zero Harm has been, and do you think we will ever achieve that?
Well, we have achieved a lot. Andrew said that earlier. We have had 5 fatalities in 2011.
Yeah.
They have all been in Hong Kong. Now that tells us something, and we need to be very careful what that does tell us. Our management team in Hong Kong is a first-class management team. Their dedication to the delivery of safety is absolute and is on a par with everybody else in the organisation. But they do have some particular challenges to overcome in that part of the world, and in the culture of the way the industry operates there. Now, the point there is we won't be able to find there the tools to deliver that simply by taking what we do elsewhere in the world and say, let's go and do that in Hong Kong. Yeah. But we shouldn't let that, we shouldn't conclude from that this doesn't work. One of the things about this word zero, it is absolute, and of course it is a very challenging task. Zero means zero. Yeah. And we actually shouldn't be dispirited if we are struggling to achieve that absolutely everywhere. But every part of our organisation has to have that as an objective and has to have that as an objective in 2012. Where we don't achieve it, okay, we have to move on and we have to continue to do the things that we need to do to move forward. I absolutely wouldn't agree with the point, and I suspect that the person who sent in the question probably would agree with me on that, that just because we have some setbacks and just because we don't seamlessly deliver Zero Harm in all parts on exactly the time frame that we set means that we somehow throw our hands up in the air and say, well, that was a big failure. Absolutely not. We've achieved a huge amount. And at the end of the day, whatever the outcome, and of course the situation of each of the accidents in Hong Kong is tragic, and it's tragic for the families. It's also a real tragedy for the organisation itself. But also look at the other side of the coin there. There are people alive today who would not have been had we not gone down the route that we've gone.
Yeah.
I think to the point of the question that says, will we ever get there? We are, and we have to be absolutely resolute that we will get there, and we will get there right the way across every part of our business. But I do come back to the point that I said, is that we also won't stop bringing new organisations into and new activities, and each of those bring a risk, and each of those we have to manage in the appropriate way and properly, and in the time frame that says we can get to zero everywhere in everything we do.
Yeah. The next question comes in from Kerry Daly at Balfour Beatty United Utility Solutions in Sheffield. Ian, as we're now looking to move into international markets that don't appear to have the same safety culture that we have in the Western countries, how are we going to embed on zero harm? That follows on from Andrew's comment there.
And it's a very good question. It's one that we have spent a lot of time thinking about. But let's come back to the idea of zero harm. We have to find the way of keeping everybody safe. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of that that's about behaviour, but there's also a lot of that is about physical risk management. Whatever people's behaviour, if people can't hurt themselves, they won't hurt themselves. There is certainly different ideas of the value of life and things like that in some of the markets that we may well end up in the future. The trick for us is not to say it's all too difficult, but it is to find the tools that will deliver the outcome in those markets. The key to doing that is having management teams that share that ideal. Hong Kong is a great example of that. We definitely have more work to do in Hong Kong, but we will get there, and we will find the ways of doing that because our management team in territory are both highly competent and absolutely committed to the task. And whilst we have had some real tragedies this year, we have also made some big progress even in that one territory. So I'm confident that we can get there. It'll be tough, but as the man said, nobody said it would be easy.
Yeah.
And there's some real learning around the business. I mean, if we reflect back to 2007, one of the things that started us on this journey was an absolutely catastrophic year that we had in Dubai. And as we look at the performance that's happened in Dubai since then, it's been just a transformational change by the team in that country, looking at how they operate, how they apply the thinking of zero harm appropriately to a multicultural and also multilingual society that we have in our workforce. And they've absolutely come huge distance in what they've done. And actually that's the thinking we have to do as we apply each new territory that we look at entering. We do have to sit back and think very hard about, for instance, our entry into India and how we work in that particular culture. But we have two choices. We either have to look at a country and say there is no way we can operate in an environment that's there, or we have to take the learning that we've done all the way around the business, look at the culture that's there and apply the relentless leadership that says we can deliver and we can operate in that market and we can make a difference.
And it is worth pointing out, just for clarity, as Andrew said there, if you look at Dubai from where we were now 3-4 years ago, we now have one of the best safety performances in the group as well as in the territory.
Yeah. The next question we've got comes from Shafkat Akbar at Balfour Beatty Regional Civil Engineering in Somerset. Andrew, we want to know how do we ensure that operating companies are working to the same zero harm standards, and how do we ensure that there's no conflict between?
Yeah, I mean the standards. I mean two sides of that. First of all, we're very clear and we have a standard set of principles and operating procedures that we set around the business. We have the objectives that are very clearly laid out that are for each business. Each business has prepared their journey plans according to those. And as a follow-up to that, each of the businesses subject themselves to audit and checking processes to ensure that they're delivering that. And of course, we always have the metrics that we measure monthly as to see how people are performing. And then when you look also at how issues such as training, Sally's mentioned the leadership program. More than 600 people have gone on the program now, and that's not just from selected operating companies, that's right the way across the world.
Yeah.
So we are confident that we've set out the principles to start with, we've trained the leaders and educated the leaders in how they should perform, they've prepared their plans, and they're now checking themselves against it.
Yeah. The next question is my own question. I would like to know, Balfour Beatty is considered to be an industry leader in our approach to health and safety. How do we ensure that we set the bar even higher for our competitors going forward?
Well, I'll come back to the very obvious point there. The reality is, if you just look at output there, and that's only one measure of this, you actually can't set it higher than zero. I mean, it isn't possible to do. So, provided we have that level of absolute performance in mind, we are always going to be setting the bar high for our competition. We have to bear in mind that our competition, we have some very, very competent competition around the world, and they are setting their own bar higher and higher and higher. This is not, we don't have a free run at this. So we absolutely have to be aimed at the very best performance that we can be. We then have to go back and look at the inputs to that. And at the end of the day, that comes down to the methodology, the thinking that gets us there. And I think there is a lot in what we're looking at in Zero Harm, which does lead the industry, and in the quality and training of the leaders that are going to take us forward. And those seem to me to be the elements of it. But let us not think that leadership is automatic just because we set ourselves those targets. Our competition are very competent, very capable, and very determined to get to the same place as us.
Yeah. I hope everyone's enjoyed today. And I hope everyone watching has enjoyed our first show in the Spotlight series. Ian, what's your plans and ambitions for the Spotlight series? Any BAFTA awards?
Well, I think probably if we reflect on today, I think we'll have a look afterwards and see whether it's going to qualify. No, I mean the real point about the series is that we get real interaction with everybody around the group. I am above all interested in the questions that come forward because they tell me an awful lot about what's on people's minds around the organisation, what's of concern, etc. What I'd love to do is to move the way this works into something which is directly interactive. The nature of the activities here today is inevitably one stage removed when people are sending questions in and then we're answering them. It'll be great to get those questions face to face, but we'll move on to that as the technology develops.
Excellent. Thank you, Ian, Sally and Andrew. And thank you for watching and hope you'll join us next time.